So, hi, this is Mama Gina, and I am back with another chat with one of my favorite creative people of all time. We met some years ago, and it's been way too long since I've seen her face. Staci B, the Haiku Ninja, is with us today, and I'm really, really excited for her to share, for you, Staci, to share your creative process with everybody. Because I just find this so fascinating that it takes some people 500 pages to tell a story. It takes me 5 or 6 minutes to tell a story in musical form. And it takes you precisely 17 syllables to tell a story. And to distill the truth down to that just blows me away. So please tell people about yourself, a little bit about yourself, and talk about your inspiration. I'm excited. Yay.
Well, I fell in love with haiku when I lived in Tampa, which is where we met.
Right.
I was teaching a creative writing class at the Life Enrichment Center, which was a senior center. And when they hired me, they said, "Oh, it's a drop in class. You don't just, do whatever every class." And I was like, "Have we met?" Yes. That is not going to work for me. I need to have some kind of structure. So I started doing 8 week syllabi and quickly discovered there were some poets in the class.
Mm.
And I thought it's really not fair to them to be just talking about character development and plot and how to write dialogue. So every week on this 8 week syllabus, I began incorporating some form of poetry.
Nice.
Half the time I would go teach it to myself online and then come and teach it to them on
That's why
Wednesday
we
morning.
teach, right?
Well, my mother said to me, "You only need to be one step ahead as a teacher. That's all that matters."
Right.
So, for the best advice I've ever gotten. So, the time that I put haiku on, the following week, people came in with haiku scribbled on Dunkin' Donuts napkins
Yes.
and gas station receipts. And one of the women even told me she was driving down West Shore and saw a magnolia tree in bloom and pulled off into one of the side streets, and she wrote 5 haiku
Wow.
about the magnolia tree blooms. And
Wow.
I thought, this is super interesting to me. So that was in 2002.
Yeah.
Um, it's been a minute that I've been working with this, and it hasn't been every minute of every day publicly. But I myself have, I mean, and I'm guessing at this estimate, but I'm going to say it's probably around 1,500 to 2,000 at this point in the 18
Wow.
years because I write them in my journals.
Nice.
It helps me. That is a huge part of my creative process is the distillation because the way my brain is wired, and I've come to understand that if I were 10 in 2021 instead of on my way to 58,
Right?
I probably would have some diagnoses.
I
Okay.
hear you. Yes.
Back in the 60s, they were like, just send the kid to their room. Don't let them have dinner. Take away treats. Take away a toy. There was nothing about understanding why
Right.
anybody behaved the way they did. And there are always reasons, right? I mean, there are always
Yes.
reasons why somebody does what they do. So I realized that haiku has really, and this is the first time I've ever talked about it, but it really helps me take the boing, 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 which is a part of my everyday life,
Right.
and funnel it into 17 syllables that really expresses what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling. So 3 pages of journaling into 17 syllables is
Right.
quite a distillation, and it really, I say it captures the essence of whatever it is you're trying to say. Because I remember when I wrote my first novel, the manuscript was 500 and some pages. Writing the back cover copy was 10 times harder.
Right. Always is.
10 times harder. Putting the entire novel into 100 words, because that's really what you have for a back cover. I thought I was going to rip my hair out. It was so difficult. And now I consistently put my thoughts and feelings in 17 syllables. So there is some irony there. but it helps me. It helps me process. It doesn't help me process. It helps me understand what I've processed.
I love that. I love it almost feels like a survival mechanism in some ways.
It is because I have issues as a creative.
I think we
I'm
all
just
do.
gonna say it. We are all, I mean, I joke all the time that I am 3 steps from a beautiful mind on any given day.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I mean, you combine, and I'm not saying this as any kind of a braggart, it's documented fact. I have a highly intelligent brain, and when you have that with the creativity, you combine that with any strain, genus, species of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what you get.
Right. I just had a conversation last night with somebody talking about some of that, and I start my concerts with "Welcome to my therapy session." All these songs were written because I had
Right,
stuff that I had to work through, and
right,
it's cheaper
right.
than going to a psychiatrist.
Well, I think that I won't say every artist, but most artists, I will say, because I shy away from making broad sweeping generalizations, but I think most artists use their art, whatever it is,
Right.
to process what they're feeling that they may not even realize they're feeling.
Yes.
And I think one of the glorious things that has come out of this pandemic is people who never considered themselves to be artists who are painting
Uh-huh.
and writing and doing all of the things that they've always told themselves they could never do.
Right.
Because one of my biggest joys is when I do a haiku workshop, to see the people in the beginning who are like, and have them come away. I have a friend, I won't name her. I used to do them in a park near my house on Monday nights when
Right.
I first started being more formal about this a few years ago. And she's a very left brained PhD with a very high level position at a local university. So, as a woman in a field that has been dominated by men, um, and she now regularly sends me haikus she's written.
Oh, wow.
I get them all. I got one from this woman. She's been a huge supporter of the public installation stuff, which we'll talk about at some point,
Yeah.
and has contributed to all the Indiegogo campaigns and stuff. And out of the blue, she sent me 3 haiku
Wow.
that she wrote about her autistic son.
Oh, wow. That's just beautiful.
And, I want to honor that. So I said, would you mind if I took one of these and made you the guest haiku artist on my Instagram page?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, my mission is connection.
Uh-huh.
Haiku is a tool. That's all it is. That's my ministry, and connecting people through the art of haiku has proven to be quite rewarding for me.
I love it. I mean, I remember all those years ago meeting you and all of your artwork and your little signs and everything that
Right,
were
right.
all full of haiku. And I've got to tell this story, and I don't even know
Sure.
if you remember this, but we one of the last times that we had a little bit of time together at a little craft fair. Um we were talking about the 10,000 hour theory of if you spend
Mm,
10,000 hours that give at a thing, you develop some type of mastery. It happens. And you shook your head and you said, I don't know that I've ever spent 10,000 hours doing anything except working on me. I'm an expert of me. And that was so profound to me. And I thought, if I never do anything else, if I just work on shining this stuff up, and, now all these years later, you and I both have our 10,000 hours in on the stuff that we've
and
been
then some.
developing. And then some. Yeah, definitely. You working with haiku and with other things that you're doing, me with my music and connecting with people in a different way, but very much for the same reasons. I want
Mhm.
people to feel things, and that's, my music is the way that I do that. Um, but I will never forget that you had such a profound impact on me, that discussion and the
Thank
work that you
you.
were doing. It was just, And I needed for you to hear that, because we don't always get those moments to tell people back that they had an impact, and you really do. And I know, I mean, I just know that your haiku workshops must have that kind of an impact on people that is a long lasting thing. It's not, oh, I went and did this thing for a weekend and it was fun. It like literally
Right.
impacts their lives.
Well, and I think that comes from my commitment to knowing who I am. And I'm not 100% there. I don't know that you get 100% there until you drop your body, you know? Um,
Right.
but it's something that I've been committed to since the mid 80s. You know, I remember I had been fired from a job. I didn't handle it well. And I ended up moving to West Palm Beach
Uh-huh.
because all the books, I went to the library. I was living in Manhattan at the time, or in Pittsburgh at the time. Went to the library, and every book I got said, "Get back on the horse, get back on the horse, go for interviews." And I'm like, "Hello, US Air, how much is a ticket to West Palm Beach?"
Right.
Because I had friends there. And I lost my train of thought there for a second. Darn. Though that does happen these days sometimes. It really does. I'm just going to blame COVID. That's
Yeah, we
It's
can
all
all
the
blame
Rona's
COVID.
fault. Um, anyway, and when I moved down there, I was taken to my first Unity service.
Okay,
I
yes.
had never. I was raised as a Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and had left the church. Probably 4 or 5 years before this happened, and I mean, I had been searching for a long time. I was going to Bible study classes in middle school at a Methodist church, which I was not very appreciated by the
Right,
Catholic Church back then.
right. Been there, done
Um,
that.
yeah. And so this friend of mine took me to a Unity service in West Palm Beach, and she took me to the bookstore after. And I
Mm,
picked up a copy of James Allen's As a Man Thinketh,
okay.
and which was written hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And that's what really put me on the path of going, there is more than just this. And
Right.
paying your bills, and what kind of furniture you have, and what kind of car you drive, and how much money is in your bank account. And I say a lot that when an issue you're dealing with is both in the macrocosm and the microcosm, good luck with that, because
Yeah.
it's very challenging to change that perception, or if it's already solidified into a belief, to adjust that, if it's both in the ethers and in your family,
Yeah.
whether they be blood related or not. And that's what really got me started. So I've been doing this for a long time, and you don't ever graduate.
Right. Right. But you do find new ways to express it, and I love that.
Absolutely. And I've done that because I started out as just a writer. When I left my corporate job in 1998, I was working and living in Manhattan in advertising, making a boatload of money,
Yeah.
because at the time that's what was important to me, you know. And I left to finish my first novel because I had an agent. And so I always primarily considered myself to be a writer. And the pandemic has given me the gift of expanding that to artist.
That is so
Yes,
wonderful.
in ways that I never could have imagined. It's been amazing. Because and I'm not the only person who was in this situation, but I had really decided to focus on the haiku. And I had multiple irons in the fire a year ago.
Yeah.
There was an Earth Day fashion show called Ecolution that had commissioned me to interview some people about a pivotal moment in their lives, about their perception around the environment, and transform those stories into haiku. They were to be projected at the end of the runway as the models were walking in all reclaimed materials.
Oh, wow.
I was to do a couple of workshops for Earth Day, because April is National Poetry Month. A lot of people
Nice.
don't know that, but it is. And so I was like, let me really push this. The marketing Staci took over. And then, boom, the state is shut down.
Right.
And I thought, I can wallow. And that's a choice. And it's something I know how to do pretty well. Or I could just double down and see what happens. And holy cow.
Yeah. It's so bizarre to a person, everyone that I have talked about, every creative person that I have talked to about their universal timeout, COVID
Hmm.
timeout.
Hmm.
Every one of us has taken our creativity into an entirely new or furthered realm.
Yep.
Every one of us has doubled down, and I remember those first few weeks where everything was being canceled on my 2020 calendar and
Right.
thinking, oh, oh, because it was about survival and it was about money. And even though, and now I'm not going to see these people, and that means they're not going to buy my music and they're going to forget about me. And I started going into that spiral. And suddenly I picked my head up and said, and if this continues, what would I do? And I made a plan and I'm executing it. I mean, I've got a new CD coming out and everything,
Good
and
for
and
you.
it's all from all of the work that I've been doing over the
Right.
last year that I wouldn't have had time to do if I'd been busy
Yep. Yep. Yep.
being a musician. Now I get to be a musician.
Well, I think, and I will use a broad sweeping generalization on this statement. I think all artists are either introverts or extroverted introverts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm the latter, but I like my time alone
I love
a
it.
lot. I like me. I'm funny. I like spending time with me. Amuse myself all the time. So I'm good with spending time with me. I don't need, now, do I miss seeing other people? Have I missed that? Absolutely. But I got into a point in my life where I was able to own what worked for me and what didn't in terms of socialization. Whereas when I was 18 years old, I was going to the bars with all my, because that's what you did in college,
Right.
you
Right.
went to the bars. I never even liked beer and I'm drinking a beer. And now, yeah, I don't do that. I
Yeah.
do what I know I want to do. And I
Yeah.
give myself permission to cancel if I am not in a state that is going to make that experience feel good to me.
Yes. I've said often in the last 10 years, because that's when I stepped back out on the road full time. And I've said very often, I'm fortunate that I can make a life and a living doing what I
Right, right.
love. Um, it's so bizarre. This year has been exceptional for me with not being able to play out and do shows. It's been an exceptional year for making contacts and connections and getting my music out there because I've been able to focus on the things that really matter.
Yep.
It's just it's crazy, but I'm actually rather enjoying this. And part of me, I'm starting to book things for the end of the year because I figure by then maybe I'll be vaccinated. um and I'm just, part of me is like, ooh, that means I have to go out and be around people again.
I don't know an artist who doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
My actor friends are all okay with it because they're going to be on stage.
Right.
So there's a wall there that they don't have to deal with. I mean, you will too, but I would imagine with the kind of person you are, it's more like sitting in somebody's living room,
It is exactly like that. I do a
than
lot of
going to,
concerts like that.
right, than going to a Poison concert.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's a common, I think that push and pull of being around people and alone time,
Yeah.
that's a seesaw every artist rides.
It is. It is. It's
Because
nice
again,
to know we're not alone.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think the other thing, one of the things, so when the lockdown was about to happen, there is a hyperlocal news source that produces a newsletter here in Pittsburgh called The Incline.
Uh-huh.
They're owned by a group called whereby.us, and they've got them in 5 other cities. And the Incline, the woman who was the director of the Incline at the time, and I became pretty friendly. And we had scheduled a live Zoom event to do a haiku workshop with people to talk about what was going on because things had already started to change
Right.
before the formal lockdown happened. Spring baseball had been canceled. Like, remember the little things
Right. Right.
started happening, and you're like, wait,
We
this might
uh-huh.
be more serious than I thought it was going to be. Uh, so we did this on the 16th of March, and that led to people going, can we do this every week?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And it ended up being a creative outlet, a way to stay connected to other people. And from that was born the Haiku Ninja Collective,
For real.
for real.
Wow.
Um, because what I started with in April was doing ekphrastic poetry, which is poetry about an art object.
Okay.
And so we would get on and I have a process that I use that works really, really well, especially since it was going to be virtual and you don't want dead time
Right.
in a virtual experience. So I had to create some way to do it that would keep the pace up and keep people interested. So I was able to do that, and we started doing works of art. Everything from Jacob Lawrence, who I fell in love with the first time I ever walked into MoMA,
Oh, wow.
to and her name just ran right out of my head. She's actually from Pittsburgh. Mary is her first name, anyway. And I did a lot of local artists because I was like, why not lift up other people? You know,
Right.
because I didn't consider myself an artist at that point.
Oh, you're an artist.
Haiku writer, you know what I mean? Well, it just goes to show you how jacked your perception of yourself can be.
Yes.
Because I think most people would have already labeled me as an artist, but I was like, I don't have the credentials. I didn't go to school, you know. So we did that, and it became very clear within a couple of weeks that people really needed a place to vent about what they were dealing with.
Nice.
All of the imposed changes with no time to reconcile old with new. It was just like, this is changing. You can no longer go out to eat dinner.
Right.
Period. You can no longer stop at the neighborhood pub for a cocktail after work. Boom. No time for any kind of processing. And so we started writing haiku about what we were doing. And then in July, I found out about an art show that was being done here in a neighborhood called Dormont, and it was all to be Corona art. It all had to be, it was called Corona Crafted, and it all had to be made during the pandemic. So I throw my hat in the ring, having zero idea what I'm doing to myself, because that's the way it's got to be, right? Or you'd never do it.
Right.
And I had what I thought was a brilliant idea. I did all this research, and then I come to find out it's not going to work because they're hanging all the paintings or artwork in the windows of businesses facing outward. So you can't have any interaction with the art. And that was part of my idea. So now I'm literally 19 days from having to install the show. My idea is kaput. I have to come up with a brand new idea, create it. First, I have to do all the research because I'm not going to know what I'm doing probably. So do all the research to figure out what I'm going to need. Can it be done? Blah, 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 blah. Create the art and then figure out how to hang it backwards, basically. Because it's facing out as opposed to hanging on a wall. And I did that.
So
and it was awesome.
What was your solution?
I did 4 paintings, acrylics and watercolor. And they're on my website. And this was the hardest part. And this is part of the process is, you do need your left brain to be an artist, a visual artist, because it's math.
Yeah.
And nobody told me that. I'm like, what is all this math, this measuring and this dividing and multiplying? What is happening? But I figured out a way to put 10 circles on each painting after I just did a watercolor wash as the background. I did all of the other painting on top of those circles and then was able to peel them off. And I did 10 haiku on each painting to represent the first 4 weeks of the pandemic shutdown. So that happened. And then the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership in November put out a call. They wanted to do holiday windows. And I was like, well, I've never done a holiday window before. I wonder what that'll be like. And, I think part of the process for me is finding that place of faith and trust that if I get the heck out of my own darn way, which is not always easy, that I will be gifted with something incredible.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I'd wanted to put my haiku and thoughts and words on clothing. And I was partnered with a women's clothing boutique, and the young woman who was the liaison for this project and the project consultant and I all did a Zoom call. And it was hilarious because I was the only one without a nose ring. I thought, yeah, women my age who have a nose ring, we're doing the pogo at CBGB's in the 1980s. So, okay. But they were both wonderful, lovely young women. And I presented some ideas. And then I said, if you'd allow me, there's another idea pirouetting in my head. And I showed her some of the calligraphy that I had been doing on different things. And she said, I love that. And I said, why don't we do a cape?
Nice.
And I wrote, space and grace is a term I use all the time because it is the biggest gift one can give oneself and the biggest gift one can give anyone else.
Nice.
And so I wrote a haiku about giving it to yourself, a haiku about giving it to others. And then on the back, I did space and grace in giant print and all the words and phrases that came to me about space and grace. And after investigating how to get the words on the cape, I realized I was going to have to do it by hand, which terrified
me. Yeah.
Having gone to Catholic school and being left-handed and having my handwriting criticized in the formative years of my life, it was an issue for me still all these years later. And the universe knew that. And it was like, time to let go of that.
Yes.
And that's also part of the process that I don't know artists really talk about a lot, because being an artist is putting yourself in a relationship with you.
Yes. Yes.
And it's holding up a mirror to your crappy perceptions about yourself, your ridiculous beliefs about yourself, your flaws, if you want to call them that, quirks. You know, you're holding up it's like being in a fun house for all of that stuff.
Yeah, you see everything.
Everything. And I had to get the hell over myself and say, look, you've made this commitment. Embroidery and silk screening are out of the budget.
Right.
And again, the process, because I find this fascinating and people I've shared it with find it fascinating too. So everybody said, well, you know, you need to get one of those cardboard sewing boards and you have to pin the piece of the material that you're going to write onto it because it can't move and blah, 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 and all this other, and everybody's giving me their advice. So it turned out that Brianna, who was with the women's boutique, was a costume design student at a local university, which is part of the reason we decided to go ahead and do a piece of clothing. So I have the piece pinned down with push pins on the cardboard, and I literally was panicked. Yeah. I have no idea how to do this. Literally no idea. And it sat like that for 2 or 3 days. And I live in a small apartment. It's like 500 and some square feet. So the table's in the middle of my living room. I'm walking past it 100 times a day. And I thought, you know what? You need to just let it be. It will be shown to you. And that is also an important part of my creative process. Again, is getting this, which wants to be in control and wants to figure things out and wants to prove how smart it is, to sit down and shut up. So the real gift has the room to come through. And one morning I woke up and I said, you know what? If you wrote all of the words for the haiku on individual pieces of paper in the size you think it's going to be, you could kind of position those papers on the material, and that way you can angle them, you can move them, you can rearrange them. And I ended up using next tape to tape, because I had no Scotch tape in the house, to tape all these papers onto the initial panel. And then I got to let it sit and go, are you happy with that? Well, what if I moved this one just a little bit this way? And what if I angled this one down 20 degrees? And then it said, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And then I ended up inking it from the bottom up.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah.
And I ended up inking it from right to left because I'm left-handed. And ink can smear when you're dragging the side of your hand across.
Yep.
So I ended up through that process of just meditating. And, I joke all the time, letting go is easy. Letting it stay gone, that's a whole different story,
Right.
but letting it stay gone for longer and longer periods so that I was open to receiving that idea.
Yes.
And like I could cry at how phenomenally it turned out.
Oh, that is so wonderful. Are there pictures of that
Yep, there are
cake
pictures on my website.
on your
Yep,
website?
yep,
We should mention this now before it goes out of my head. It's Staci B, STACIB
yep.
dot
.com.
com,
Yep, yep.
and also the Haiku Ninja dot
Yes,
com is
all
out
the
there.
work from yes, because I do commissions, I do workshops. I'm getting ready to do a brand new one, and if I'm honest, I haven't completely finished the curriculum yet on haiku and alternative to journaling
Nice.
as a way to streamline your journaling practice for a company called Rebel, which is a women's networking group started by Shannon Siriano, and they do a conference every year. And yes, please positive energy because it's at 10 o'clock the day after I get my second vaccination shot.
Oh, you'll be fine.
So
Yes.
it's like 22 hours after I get the shot. So I'm holding out. But yeah, it's for her conference, and I'm excited about it because I think people probably did a lot of journaling over the pandemic year,
Right.
and maybe looking for a way to keep the benefit without having to spend the time.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
got you. Oh, that is so wonderful. I am so thrilled to hear that you're doing well with this, that you have just grown and expanded and are sharing this art form with so many people. That just blows me away. Good
yeah,
for
it
you.
really well, and the Haiku Ninja Collective, to get back to the public installation thing, I really had a vision of seeing them on billboards. Because some of what we've written is really stab in the heart or hilarious,
Yeah.
you know? And in November last year, there's a movement called the Awesome Movement. And it's international. They've got chapters in cities all over the world. And they have 12 board members who each contribute $1,000 for the year. And every month they give out $1,000 to a proposal to make that city more awesome.
Oh, cool.
And in November, I got the award,
Oh,
which is
yes.
what seeded the bus stop shelters. So
That's
that award paid for the first three. And now I did an Indiegogo, and we've got two more that just went up at the end of February.
that's killer. Oh my gosh.
Yes. So
And
it's
and
really
that's
cool.
that's the kind of public art installation that I think is so important because you're placing it where real people see it, not in some museum in a
Right.
corner
Right.
where people have to go to a special part of town or they had to have money kind of thing. This is true public art and I just
Yep.
love it.
Well, and it's so cool because I was very, I worked in advertising for a lot of years. So I know enough to know that location is everything.
Right.
And so I specifically picked bus stop shelters that were at stoplights.
Uh-huh.
So the traffic would be exposed as well when sitting at a red light. It
Right.
wouldn't just be people who were walking or who were taking public transportation. And two things that I want to mention about that. First of all, the media company who I bought the space from it's Gateway Media. I will name them because they've been extraordinarily generous. Because the rep said to me, Staci, these mean something.
Yeah.
This is meaningful. This isn't, no offense to lawyers, but some guy looking to get workers' comp cases.
Right.
This is a way to connect people to their feelings and their emotions. And by reading that, they then know they're not alone.
Yes.
So they have given us some comp time.
Excellent.
They'll all probably be up through the end of April, which is, I mean, I'm blown away and so appreciative of that. But the other thing that I think is really important that hit me, because some woman in an area of town here goes out running every morning and photographs whatever art she comes across.
Uh-huh.
Well, without me knowing anything, she took a picture of one of our shelters and posted it on Instagram. This is what I found on my run this morning.
Yes.
And it reminded me that as artists, and I think this is it's important for me. I'll let others decide whether it's important for them. We put our work out into the world
Mm-hmm.
and we hear nothing.
True.
Crickets.
Yes.
And you have to, as an artist, I believe you have to trust the seeds that you've planted,
Yes.
even though you don't always get to see the blooms.
Yes.
And then be especially appreciative when you do.
Yes.
Like with you sharing that story of us talking at that craft fair, or this woman putting up the picture on Instagram,
Right.
or this woman sending me her haiku. You've inspired me. I'm going to write a haiku a day. It's really helpful for me to process my feelings. So the appreciation is out there, whether or not you get to see it.
Yeah. It's
And
yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because some of the gigs that I've played over the last 10 years are festivals where
Okay.
there's camping. And often what will happen if it's hot outside, if I've got a 7-8 o'clock evening concert, for an hour and a half, but it's outside on the stage outside, and if it's too hot and there's a bunch of mosquitoes or there's this or there's that, people don't always come to the concerts. Sometimes they're well attended, and sometimes I have 10 people in front of me when I know there's 200 people at the festival.
Right.
But the next morning, what I will hear is, we put the kids down early and we stayed at our campsite, but we heard you and it was so inspiring. And it's so nice to hear those things, because I think I'm singing into the winds.
Right. Yep.
Or I'm putting out CDs and I think that nothing's happening. And then suddenly some podcaster picks up one of my songs from who knows where he got it and says, here's some great music coming out of Tampa, Florida. And I'm like, I never heard of you. We have absolutely no connection that I can find, not even 7 degrees, but they're playing my music. And I think that as artists, I would create regardless of whether there were other people involved or not. But damn, that validation feels good.
It does. Well, I think part of it is the society in which we live, because it's all about, especially for artists, your success comes with the viral.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age of social media and the internet, your success comes with that gold record or that platinum album. Your success comes with that New York Times bestseller label, or moving up the charts on Amazon if you're a writer, if you're a painter, getting into that particular gallery, or hitting a certain sales figure. And, if you create art to make money, you need to find another job.
Probably, yeah.
I'm not saying that they're mutually exclusive. But what I'm saying is the motivation changes your art.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think
and if your goal is to make money, you are not putting forth your most authentic self in that moment.
Right, because you're worried about
Your focus isn't putting forth my most authentic self. Your focus is, how am I paying the rent?
And there's not a problem with that type of art. I mean, I think that that's totally valid, but I think that you're right. Pure creativity kind of flows. And if you have a target in mind already before it's flowing, you're already changing the course of what's going to manifest.
And that has been such a struggle for me, Gina, because I grew up in advertising. Perception is reality. Who's the market? What are not only the demographics, but what are the sociographics? Who is your ideal client? How do you position to them? What language do you choose? Etc. And on and on and on. And if I'm being completely honest, it has only been in the last couple of years where that has dissipated to a level. I'm not saying I also don't get thoughts about it.
Mm-hmm.
and that's not still my default, but my level of awareness about it has grown to the point where I say, mm, what are you doing? Because and this is something that I don't know a lot of artists really talk about openly. I have seen a proliferation of ads on Facebook for how to make money as an artist and how to make a living as an artist and all this other
Right.
shit. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But I do believe that if that is your intention, the energy changes what you create. It just does.
It
Again, not that
absolutely
there isn't
does.
a place for that, not that it's not valid. I'm not judging it. I am saying it changes it, and I have struggled with that. Do I go and do all the business licenses again the way I did for my publishing company, 15 years ago in Tampa? Do I ignore that? Do I just go on as a sole proprietor who just does what she does as a contractor and freelancer and not get into the business? Because after my experience in the business world and a lot of things that are just indigenous in the corporate jungle,
Yes.
it feels like I am a horse with a bad bit in its mouth being dragged someplace I don't want to go.
Right.
When
And
they talk about all of the business, doing a SWOT analysis and, what other products out there are like yours and how is yours different? And I'm like, it's not that I can't do that because I've done that. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've done it several times.
right.
And each and every time it has felt like there is an army in my belly wielding swords.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel good to me, but it may feel good to another artist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think part of your artistic process has to be allowing yourself to be as honest with you as you can
Yes.
about what feels good to you and what doesn't. Because I just had an opportunity to apply to a business incubator, and I'm on the Zoom information call going,
When you start trusting your gut, it changes
it does.
everything. It changes
Yep.
when you start actually feeling your gut. First of all, you
Right.
have to feel it, but
Right.
you have to
Right.
get rid of all the the numbing stuff that you've done to it for your entire life, just so that you can suck it up. And because I worked in corporate too,
Right. Right.
and you suck up an awful lot that doesn't feel right, and you learn to make it feel right. Um, and then when
Absolutely.
you walk away from that life, suddenly you've got all this stuff bubbling up, and your first inclination is to drown it, is to say no, 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 don't feel like that. And then suddenly it's so liberating to finally trust that instinctual stuff that churns up when something is not right for you. It's not right. And listen, I think that we should be able to make a living with our art, make a life, like I said, a life and a living. I want to be able to
Right.
do both. I want to enjoy my life. I want to enjoy my creative efforts. I don't want to feel like I'm locked in every day and I have
Right.
hard deadlines that I have to meet because 100 other people depend upon me.
Right. Right.
That's not how I'm wired. I don't like that. Um, and being able to be liberated from all of that stuff is so wonderful. And I have found that when I follow my gut, and when I follow these inspirations all the way through, sometimes they're the best stuff that I put out. A few years ago, I started writing some material out of a character in my head. It just happened. It was really bizarre. I wasn't sure where it was coming from, and that's a whole nother show. But I also had some health issues at the same time, and it all culminated in me doing a CD based on this character. And I thought, doing that kind of a creative work is going to kill my career. To suddenly, I go from Mama Gina, the songwriter that talks about people's
Mhm.
emotions and gods and goddesses, and suddenly flip and do this 15th century Welsh bard from another timeline. And then most of it is funny and poking at people, and I'm like, this is going to be a career killer. You know what? That's my biggest seller, and that's who everybody wants at their festival, because I allowed her that voice. I
Mhm.
allowed her to
Yep.
come through. And so the project I'm working on now is another voice that has come through, not funny at all, not related in any way, but I've gone full bore with this one just trusting,
Mm-hmm.
it's really liberating not to keep checking myself and going, is this something people will listen to? Is this something people will listen to? Instead, I'm just going, I'm listening to her. I'm
Right.
doing what she's sending me, and people listen or they don't, but I have to allow this flow to happen.
Well, and I think, that is peripherally something else I wanted to mention regarding the process, and everybody's is different. But I don't know that you can truly be a success as an artist unless you are on some type of journey of self discovery.
Yeah.
And whether that means a spiritual path, and I don't mean religion,
Right,
because
right,
to
right.
me, that's the antithesis of spirituality, but some type of spiritual path. Because, I mean, that walking into that Unity bookstore in 1987 put me on a path.
Yeah.
And I've now studied Buddhism and Taoism and the Kabbalah and Wicca. I was a witch I practiced Wicca for a while, all different kinds of things. And I have just taken what I feel works for me and incorporated it. I love Abraham, Abraham Hicks. I love
Yep.
Byron Katie. I love Caroline Mace, three completely different people.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, as Joseph Campbell pointed out, they're all talking about the same thing.
Yep. Yep.
And that's understanding the connection and the extension that we are of the creator, no matter what label you want to put on it.
Yeah.
And I feel that has been such an important part of my process. And my flavor might not be the flavor everybody else likes,
Right.
but I don't know how you do this work without having some form of that
Yeah. It's
involved in your
integrity.
process.
It's integrity. It's truth. And when
Right.
I write something that's true, I have a very definitive physical, emotional response to it.
Right.
The second that I can see it on the page or I can hear it clearly in my mind, even if I haven't sussed it out, there are tears. For me, that's this is real. This is true.
Right.
And this has to be done. And, I think everybody has some kind of click or some type of
Mhm.
thing that just suddenly occurs and they go, that's the thing.
Well, and people want definition. They want it to be defined. What does it
Hmm.
look like when you feel your intuition? And I do a little thing sometimes, and I actually did it yesterday because intuition is a muscle.
Yeah.
Like everything, like every other experience in life is, whether it's your spirituality, a commitment to fitness and going to the gym, whatever, it's a muscle and it needs to be worked.
Hmm.
And so yesterday I was on my way somewhere and I said, I'm not going to decide what route I'm taking.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to let my intuition, because I felt instinctively the need to strengthen that muscle yesterday for whatever reason,
Right.
And so I did my best, and it takes a lot of practice, especially if you're smart, to shut your brain down.
Hmm.
And for someone like me who has used my intelligence and my ability to figure things out and my resourcefulness as components of my self-worth, it's challenging to let my belly be the one in charge,
Right. Right. Right.
But I just let my gut get me. And my mind's like, well, look at you, stuck 6 cars in a red light, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you don't know what the other way looks like.
Hmm.
You don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think exercising your intuition muscle by playing games like that for yourself can be very useful and productive.
Yeah. Now you're making me think.
Yeah.
I
It's
love
it's a
it.
good exercise. It really is, because if nothing else, it'll show you how much resistance you have.
Yes.
If it
Indeed.
does nothing else, it will show you that.
I think all I'm ever doing is uncovering my resistance,
Oh, absolutely.
revealing it every step.
Girl, that's the haiku I wrote in my journal this morning. Reluctant
Really.
I sit. Yeah, it was the first line. Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. Because I made a decision that feels very scary to me. And it's happening tomorrow morning. And yeah, there's some pushback from pieces inside of me, whether it's merely the neural pathways as a
Right.
neuroscientist would say, whether it's the demons, as other people may phrase it. I don't know. I have a tendency to like to personify the voices in my head.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I've got resistance to it. And the only thing you can do with resistance is face it.
Yeah.
And space and grace, man, space and grace.
I love it.
Because when you give yourself the freedom to have the resistance, it now serves no purpose.
Yeah. You were brilliant, and I'm so glad
Well, I
that
don't know about
we
that.
got back. Yeah, no, and I'm so glad that I got a
Experience.
chance to speak with you this afternoon because this you gave me lots of stuff to think about, and I know you're giving everybody that listens a lot to think about. This is spectacular. So what's coming up for you? Any special projects that you can talk about?
Well, I just sent a proposal to I mean, it's a big company, a big
Okay.
company, to do a haiku workshop as part of a launch of a new product.
Excellent. Excellent.
Don't know,
Fingers
all
crossed for you.
yeah, and I have a Sanskrit prayer that I say, which is Jai Sri Satguru Maharaj Ki, which means victory to the light of truth.
Oh, nice.
And I say two things a lot. That and Eric Butterworth, who was the minister at the Unity in New York, had an opera singer he was very close with. And one day they were talking and he said, how do you go out on stage and perform? Aren't you terrified? There are, 5,000 people in the audience. And he said, every time before I perform, while I am waiting in the wings, I say, remove me, God, so you can be heard.
Yes. Yes, yes.
And I said that before we started.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I say that a lot. So all I can do is send it out into the world, knowing I've done the best I can, and not allow myself to become attached to the outcome.
I love it. I love it.
That's It's not easy, but that's really the only answer for me.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
I think wonderful things will happen. I am just so proud of you is not even the right word.
Thank
I'm
you.
enamored of you is what it is.
Thank you. I
I
really
think what you're
appreciate
doing,
that.
I think what you're doing is so special and that you're sharing it and teaching other people this gift and that it can flow through them is huge.
Absolutely. I also want to say at the end that I have plenty of days where I can't get out of bed, where I'm lying in bed with the blanket up to my chin, thinking about sucking my thumb again.
Yeah.
So, I love doing interviews like this, and I'm pretty much a positive person. I don't want to dismiss the other part of the process
The self-doubt, the
because
fear.
it is a part of the process.
Yeah.
And, if you've got an artistic nature, there's a really good chance that you deal with anxiety or depression or some other kind of form of doubt and insecurity. And I don't want to be dismissive of that because, in all honesty, that is just as big a part of my life as what I have shown you here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I spent a lot of years going, what is wrong with me? When I would see interviews like this and people would be positive and talking about
Happy,
their
happy.
successes. Absolutely. And I would be like, that's not me. What's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with me.
Right.
That other piece is just a part of my process.
Yeah. And an important one.
Absolutely. I couldn't be here.
I think it provides the friction that allows us to be
Yep.
effective creators.
And it's so important. I really that is my current gospel mission,
Yeah.
is helping people to understand that it's not all rose petals and chocolate ice cream.
Right. Right.
There are plenty of zucchini involved.
Yeah. You know what's
you know
funny is you were talking about having a Wiccan practice for a while and you'd studied all these other things. And in Wicca and in paganism in general, there's this huge there's a lot of talk about people doing shadow work. And I think it's so funny because as a creative, that's what I'm doing all the time. I'm just revealing more
Absolutely.
pieces of my shadow and shining light on it and transforming
Absolutely.
it, transmuting it into something beautiful. And it doesn't
Absolutely.
mean that I feel beautiful every day, but it means that I'm revealing those pieces of myself that aren't beautiful, and I'm finding a way to present them so that there's
Or that
connection.
you find aren't beautiful when
After the
someone
fact,
else
yes.
may.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know, because and I'm going to put a pitch in here from Maya Bialik's new podcast Breakdown, which I cannot recommend highly enough.
She's amazing, isn't she?
She's amazing. And she interviewed Glennon Doyle, who I had not heard of,
Okay.
who's written 3 books. And the bottom line is she was talking about her quirks and her partner's quirks, and how the things that she has always seen as dark and wrong with her partner finds fascinating. It's part of what attracted her to Glennon. And I think that's something important for us to remember, because those voices or those neural pathways, whatever they are, because do we really know? You know,
Right.
and then you layer in emotional DNA, which I've been calling it for 30 years now, which is what we bring with us from ancestry.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
there, I just don't think they know enough about DNA to know where to look for it, but it's there. We carry it into our lives with us, from my perspective. Um, and I just think it's so important to not allow yourself to get too lost in the
Right. Right.
darkness. Get as lost as you need to for as long as you need to be able to shine that light.
Absolutely. I think
Because
that's
the
the
light's
best place.
always there.
Yeah. I think that's the best place to leave this. Staci, this has been good for my heart.
It's been
Um,
really wonderful for me too. It really has
yeah.
been. I really, really appreciate you doing this and sharing this with people who might not be at a place in their life where they're willing to talk about everything,
Right. Right.
because we are all in this together.
We are indeed. So StaciB.com,
Yep.
the Haiku Ninja.com. I'll make sure and put some links in the show
Okay,
notes.
great.
And Staci, just thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I hope that the next few months you find more success and more ways to create.
Thank you
Amazing.
very, and more ways to connect and build community.
Yes, yes, yes. Bye.
Thanks so much.